The Great Hall of Station Harmony 7 buzzed with voices from 100 different worlds. Delegates filled the circular chamber, their bodies as different as the stars themselves. Some walked on legs, others floated on anti-gravity fields. Some breathed oxygen, while others existed in sealed environmental suits filled with methane or chlorine gas. At the center of the hall stood Commander Velrith of the Kryn hegemony. His forearms moved with practiced grace as he manipulated the holographic projector. Above him, a massive image appeared in the air. It showed a ship. A human ship. The indomitable Velrith's translator device converted his clicking speech into words the other species could understand. This is humanity's contribution to galactic defense. They call it a supercarrier. Silence fell across the hall. Then someone laughed. It started as a small chuckle from the Vraxian section. Then more joined in. Within seconds, the entire chamber echoed with alien laughter. Some delegates pointed at the hologram with their appendages. Others shook with amusement. The Indomitable rotated slowly in the display. It was huge by human standards, nearly 2 kilometers long. But to these advanced species, it looked like something from a museum. The hull was simple metal, reinforced steel and titanium. No shimmer of quantum shields. No phase-shifting technology. Just plain solid metal. "Those are chemical rockets," exclaimed Ambassador Zixthar from the Photon Collective. His crystalline body flashed with colors that his species used to express disbelief. "They still burn fuel for propulsion." More laughter rippled through the crowd. Velrith continued his presentation, though even he seemed amused. The vessel carries approximately 200 smaller craft. Fighter aircraft, they call them. These also use chemical propulsion and kinetic weapons. Kinetic weapons? A delegate from the Stellar Federation stood up. "You mean they throw metal at their enemies? Like cavemen throwing rocks?" The laughter grew louder. In the human section of the hall, Ambassador Sarah Chen sat perfectly still. Her face showed no emotion. Beside her, 2 human military advisors whispered to each other, but Chen raised her hand slightly. They fell silent. A Vraxian military analyst brought up more data. "According to our scans, the human carrier lacks gravity manipulation drives. It has no quantum computing systems. Their weapons cannot bend space or manipulate time. Their shields are simply layered metal plates." "How primitive," someone muttered. The analyst continued. "By our calculations, this vessel represents technology approximately 300 years behind current galactic standards. Perhaps they should focus on establishing trade colonies rather than attempting military contributions." Nods of agreement spread through the chamber. Several delegates turned to look at Ambassador Chen, their expressions ranging from pity to condescension. Chen remained motionless. Her dark eyes watched the hologram of the Indomitable as it continued to rotate. A slight smile touched her lips, but it vanished so quickly that no one noticed. "Humanity wishes to be taken seriously as a military power," Velrith said, his tone making it clear what he thought of that idea. "They have requested the opportunity to prove themselves in actual combat situations." "Absolutely not. The protest came from the Kryn section. We cannot risk civilian lives on primitive technology. What if their vessel malfunctions? What if they cannot retreat when necessary? We would be obligated to rescue them. Perhaps a training exercise," suggested someone else. "Let them fire at asteroids. That should be safe enough." More chuckles echoed through the hall. Ambassador Chen finally stood. The laughter died down as delegates turned their attention to her. She walked to the center of the chamber with calm, measured steps. Her simple uniform contrasted sharply with the elaborate dress of other ambassadors. "The Galactic Council has reviewed our vessel," Chen said, her voice clear and steady. "You have made your assessment. We accept your judgment." Surprised murmurs filled the hall. They had expected argument, perhaps anger. Instead, the humans seemed to agree with them. "However," Chen continued, "Earth respectfully maintains its offer. Should any member nation require assistance, the Indomitable and her crew stand ready to serve." "Serve?" Velrith's laugh was less kind now. "Ambassador, your species has been in space for less than a century. Most civilizations here have explored the stars for thousands of years. What could you possibly offer?" Chen met his gaze without flinching. "We offer what we have, Commander. Nothing more, nothing less." She returned to her seat. The meeting moved on to other topics, but the laughter had set the tone. Throughout the rest of the session, delegates made jokes about the primitive humans and their metal box with rockets. 3 days later, everything changed. The emergency alert burst across every communication channel in the station. Red warning lights flashed in the Great Hall as delegates scrambled to their positions. "This is Kryn Hegemony Fleet Command," a panicked voice crackled through the speakers. "We are under attack in the Kepler 442 system. Enemy vessels identified as Void Collective. Requesting immediate assistance. Multiple ships destroyed. Casualties are significant." The hall erupted into chaos. The Void Collective. The name sent fear through every species present. They were mysterious, powerful, and completely hostile. Their ships appeared without warning, destroyed everything in their path, and vanished before anyone could respond. "How many ships have we lost?" Felrith demanded. 16 destroyers, 8 cruisers, 3 dreadnoughts. The voice on the other end was breaking. "Their weapons ignore our shields. Our quantum targeting systems cannot lock onto them. They phase in and out of normal space. We cannot fight them." The Galactic Council representatives looked at each other with fear in their eyes, or whatever organs they used for seeing. The Void Collective had destroyed settlements before, but never had they attacked a military fleet so directly. "We need reinforcements," said the Stellar Federation ambassador. "Pull back the Third Fleet from the border. Redirect the—" "That will take 6 days," someone interrupted. "The Kryn fleet won't last 6 hours." Desperate voices overlapped as everyone tried to offer solutions. "Call for a ceasefire, negotiate, retreat, send probes, launch long-range missiles." Each idea was quickly dismissed as impossible or too slow. "What about evacuation?" asked a quiet voice. "There are 40,000 civilians on the mining stations in that system," Velrith said, his forearms trembling. "We cannot evacuate them in time, and our fleet cannot hold position long enough to— The Indomitable can be there in 18 hours. Everyone turned. Ambassador Chen stood once again, her expression calm despite the crisis. "Humanity's carrier is currently in the Tau Ceti system," Chen continued. "We can reach Kepler 442 faster than any other available fleet. We volunteer for this mission." Silence fell. Then Velrith spoke, his voice bitter with desperation. "Ambassador, did you not hear? The Void Collective destroys our most advanced vessels like they are nothing. Your primitive carrier would be the only option, arriving in time to help your people." Chen finished for him. The council members looked at each other. Pride warred with necessity on their faces. The humans were offering to help, but accepting meant admitting they needed help from species they had mocked days ago. "The civilians," someone whispered. 40,000 lives. Velrith's shoulders sagged. "Very well. Ambassador Chen, Earth's offer is accepted. May your metal box fare better than our advanced fleet." Chen nodded once. "We will do our best, Commander." She turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. "One more thing. You may want to watch what happens. It might be educational." As she walked away, she allowed herself a slight smile. None of the aliens saw it, but her military advisors did. One of them whispered, "Should we tell them?" "No," Chen replied quietly. "Let them see for themselves. They laughed at us. Now they'll learn why that was a mistake." Behind them, the council scrambled to organize support for the doomed human mission. Not one of them expected the Indomitable to survive. They saw this as a noble but futile sacrifice by a naive young species. They had no idea what was coming. The humans had prepared for this moment. They had studied every battle report, analyzed every Void Collective attack pattern, and built their carrier specifically to counter an enemy that other species could not fight. The galaxy was about to discover that sometimes primitive technology wasn't primitive at all. Sometimes it was exactly what the situation required. The Indomitable received its orders and changed course. In the command center, Captain Sarah Okonkwo looked at her crew. They were nervous but ready. They knew what everyone thought of them. They knew the entire galaxy expected them to fail. "All hands," Okonkwo said into the ship-wide communication system. "This is the captain. In 18 hours, we will engage an enemy that has destroyed forces far more advanced than ours. They expect us to fail. The galaxy expects us to die trying." She paused, then smiled. "Let's prove them wrong." The Indomitable dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. What Captain Sarah Okonkwo saw through the viewport made her jaw tighten. Debris floated everywhere. Pieces of Kryn warships drifted through space like broken toys. Some sections still sparked with electricity. Others leaked atmosphere and frozen clouds. The battle had been completely one-sided. "Reading 17 Void Collective vessels," reported Lieutenant Commander James Park from the sensor station. They're arranged in a sphere formation around the mining stations. Kryn survivors are clustered near the third planet. 6 ships left out of their original 30. Okonkwo nodded. Time until void ships detect us? Already have, Captain. They're turning toward us now. On the display screen, the void collective ships looked like nothing from nature or engineering. Their hulls seemed to shift and blur, never quite solid. Black and purple energy crackled across their surfaces. They moved in ways that should not be possible, changing direction without turning, accelerating without visible thrust. Incoming transmission from Kryn Fleet Commander Thexal, announced the communications officer. Put him through. The screen switched to show a Kryn officer. His blue skin had gone pale. 2 of his forearms hung limply at his sides, injured. Behind him, his bridge crew worked frantically at damaged stations. Human vessel, Thexal said, his voice tight with pain and barely controlled contempt. You should not have come. These creatures will destroy you in minutes. Their weapons phase through our shields. Their targeting systems predict our movements before we make them. Our quantum computers cannot calculate their attack patterns. You have only primitive systems. You will die here. Okonkwo kept her expression neutral. We appreciate the warning, Commander. Please transmit all tactical data you've collected on the enemy. Tactical data? Thexal almost laughed. What good will data do you? Your computers are centuries behind ours. If our systems cannot help us, yours certainly cannot. Nevertheless, Commander, the data, please. Thexal made a gesture of dismissal with one good arm. As you wish. I informed if you prefer. Just know that your sacrifice will be remembered as brave if foolish. The transmission ended. Data began flowing into the indomitable systems, Captain, Park said quietly. The void ships are definitely coming our way. Should I launch fighters? Not yet. Okonkwo studied the data streaming across her screens. Her eyes moved quickly, taking in everything. Let them get closer. I want to see how they move. On the bridge, her crew waited. They had trained for this. Every simulation, every drill had prepared them for an enemy exactly like this. But simulations were different from reality. Out here, mistakes meant death. The void ships approached in their strange, unsettling way. They seemed to flicker in and out of existence. One moment a ship would be kilometers away. The next, it had moved much closer without appearing to cross the distance in between. They're using phase shift technology, observed Science Officer Dr. Rachel Kim. Stepping, partially out of normal space to avoid detection and weapons fire. Can we track them? Okonkwo asked. Not with sensors. They produce no heat signature, no electromagnetic radiation. Our computers cannot predict where they'll appear next. Okonkwo smiled slightly. Good. Her crew exchanged glances. Good? How was any of this good? Captain, Park said urgently. 3 void ships are charging weapons. Energy readings are off the scale. If they fire, all hands brace for evasive maneuvers, Okonkwo announced calmly. Helm manual control. Pattern Delta 7. The helmsman's hands moved to physical controls, bypassing the computer assistants. Manual control confirmed. Pattern Delta 7 ready. Execute. The Indomitable lurched to starboard, not smoothly like ships with gravity drives would move. The carrier moved like old naval vessels on Earth's oceans, momentum and mass dictating every motion. Chemical thrusters fired in sequence, pushing the massive ship into a roll. 3 beams of purple energy lanced through the space where the carrier had been seconds before. The beams continued on, striking an asteroid field in the distance. The asteroids didn't explode. They simply ceased to exist, erased from reality. Void ships appear confused, Park reported, surprise in his voice. They're recalculating. Their predicted position for us was wrong. Of course it was, Okonkwo said. They use quantum prediction. They calculate probability and hit the most likely position, but we're not using computers to fly. We're using human instinct. Can't predict that. Another transmission came through. Commander Thexal again, how did you? He stopped, staring at something off-screen. Your evasive pattern made no mathematical sense. No optimal efficiency. You should not have avoided those weapons. Commander, you've been fighting with advanced technology against advanced technology. Okonkwo explained. Everything optimized and calculated. The Void Collective predicts that. We're not optimal. We're unpredictable. Before Thexal could respond, 6 more void ships appeared around the Indomitable. They surrounded the carrier from all sides. That's a kill box formation, Park said tensely. They're going to fire from all angles. We can't dodge them all. We're not going to, Okonkwo said. Launch all fighters. Execute pattern Omega. All fighters, Captain. That's 200 aircraft. Every single one now. Along the Indomitable's hull, hangar doors opened. Fighters poured out like angry hornets from a disturbed nest. They were small craft, single-pilot vehicles with stubby wings and chemical rockets. Compared to the sleek Kryn fighters with their gravity drives and energy shields, they looked like antiques. The void ships ignored them. Why wouldn't they? These primitive craft posed no threat. The Void Collective had destroyed vessels with quantum shields and reality-warping weapons. What could simple metal aircraft possibly do? That dismissal was their first mistake. "All pilots, this is Viper Lead," came a voice over the communications channel. Commander Lisa Rodriguez led the fighter wing. You know the drill. Visual targeting only. No computer locks. Trust your eyes and your instincts. These things can't predict what they can't calculate. The fighters spread out in seemingly random patterns. No formations. No tactical organization that any military computer would recognize. They moved like earthbirds in flight, each pilot making independent decisions based on what they saw. A void ship fired at a cluster of fighters. The purple beam cut through space, tracking toward its targets. But the human pilots had already moved. Not away from the beam in any logical direction. Some went up, some down, some spun in barrel rolls. One pilot flew directly toward the beam, then jinked aside at the last possible second. The beam missed everything. Impossible. Thexel breathed, watching from his damaged ship. Those fighters have no advanced sensors. How do they know when to evade? They don't know, answered one of his bridge crew, equally stunned. They guess. They react. It's completely illogical. And completely effective, Thexel admitted grudgingly. Rodriguez lined up her fighter on a void ship. No targeting computer, just her eyes and years of training. She waited until the angle felt right. Then she fired. Missiles launched from her fighter. Not energy weapons or quantum torpedoes. Simple missiles with explosive warheads and basic guidance systems. The kind of weapons that Earth had been using for centuries. The void ship's phase shift should have made it immune. Energy weapons passed through when it shifted out of normal space. But these were physical objects with mass and momentum. When the ship tried to phase, the missiles stayed locked on the physical space it occupied. 3 missiles impacted the void ship's hull. Explosions blossomed in silence. The ship shuddered, its phase shift flickering and failing. "It's solid," Park shouted from his station. "Their shields are down. All fighters target that ship," Okonkwo ordered. "Concentrate fire." The human fighters swarmed. Dozens of aircraft attacked from every angle, launching missiles and firing kinetic rounds. The void ship tried to fight back, but its weapons couldn't track so many small, erratically moving targets. Under the sustained assault, the ship broke apart. Not erased from reality like it had done to the Kryn vessels. Just destroyed, torn to pieces by conventional explosives and metal bullets. The other void ships suddenly changed their behavior. They stopped ignoring the human fighters. Purple beams lashed out, trying to shoot down the small craft. But the pilots were ready. They scattered, dove, climbed, spun, moving on instinct and reflex rather than computer assistance. For every fighter destroyed, 3 more pressed the attack. "Captain, the void ships are retreating from the mining stations," Park reported. "They're concentrating on us now." "Good, that gives the civilians time." Okonkwo watched her tactical display. "Order the fighters to execute harassment pattern. Don't commit to kills. Just keep them busy and angry." Rodriguez acknowledged and passed the orders. The fighters changed tactics, making quick strikes, then breaking away. They acted like mosquitoes, irritating and persistent, but never staying in one place long enough to be swatted. The Void Collective had never faced an enemy like this. Their advanced technology was built to fight other advanced technology. They predicted movements based on optimal efficiency and computer calculations. But humans didn't fight efficiently. They fought creatively, instinctively, illogically. And it was working. Commander Thexel watched in growing amazement. His quantum computers showed him the mathematical impossibility of what the humans were doing. The probability of their survival was nearly 0. Yet they not only survived, they were winning. "Bring our remaining ships about," he ordered his crew. "If these primitives can fight such creatures, so can we. Target the void vessels with conventional weapons, kinetic projectiles, chemical explosives. Fight like the humans do." His crew hesitated, then moved to obey. It felt wrong to abandon their sophisticated technology for such basic weapons, but they could see the results. The humans were proving that sometimes the old ways worked better. The Indomitable began firing its railguns, simple weapons by galactic standards, magnetically accelerated metal slugs. No special properties, no reality warping effects, just mass times velocity equals force. But that force was devastating. Railgun rounds tore through void ships at relativistic speeds. The ship's phase shifting couldn't help them. You couldn't phase away from a physical object moving at a significant fraction of light speed. The tide of battle had turned. Okonkwo allowed herself a small smile.
All fighters, begin attack pattern Alpha.
Let's send these things back where they came from. In the debris field, surrounded by destroyed Kryn vessels and damaged void ships, humanity's primitive carrier and her outdated fighters were doing what the most advanced fleet in the galaxy could not. They were winning. Across the galaxy, military analysts gathered in observation rooms and command centers. They watched live feeds from the Kepler 442 system with expressions of disbelief. What they were seeing should not be possible. On Station Harmony 7, the Galactic Council had assembled in an emergency session. The Great Hall's central display showed the battle in real time. Every delegate sat in stunned silence. "Run that sequence again," demanded the Vraxian military analyst. His crystalline body had lost its usual bright glow, dimmed by shock. The holographic display rewound and played again. A human fighter, no larger than a personal transport shuttle, dodged 3 separate energy beams. The pilot's movements made no sense to their computers. No pattern, no predictable response. The fighter twisted, rolled, and dove in ways that violated every principle of efficient combat maneuvering. Yet the pilot survived. "The calculation is simple," the analyst said, his voice hollow. "Probability of survival, 0.03%. But the human succeeded. How?" Ambassador Chen sat in her chair, her expression carefully neutral. But inside she felt a fierce pride. Her people were showing the galaxy what humanity could do. "They are not using computers to fly," observed a delegate from the Photon Collective. "Our sensors detect no AI assistance, no quantum calculations. The pilots are controlling their vessels manually." "Manually?" someone gasped. "That is impossible. Reaction times alone are enhanced by adrenaline and training," Chen interrupted quietly. "Humans have been flying atmospheric aircraft for over 200 years. We perfected these skills long before we reached space." The display showed another sequence. Human fighters swarmed a void collective ship like insects attacking a predator. Their weapons were primitive by galactic standards. Simple missiles, kinetic rounds, chemical explosives. Yet where advanced energy weapons had failed, these basic armaments succeeded. "Explain this," Commander Velrith demanded, turning to Chen. His 4 arms gestured at the display. "Your weapons are centuries behind ours. How do they penetrate void shields when our quantum torpedoes cannot?" Chen stood and walked to the central display. She pointed at a void ship as it tried to phase shift away from an incoming missile. "Your weapons are energy-based," she explained. "When the void ships shift out of normal space, energy attacks pass harmlessly through. But our missiles are physical objects. They have mass. When they lock onto a target, they stay locked regardless of what dimension the target moves to." "But that is too simple," protested the Vraxian. "Advanced warfare requires sophisticated solutions." "Surely, advanced warfare requires effective solutions," Chen corrected. "Sometimes simple is effective." On the display, the battle continued. The Indomitable had positioned itself between the Void Fleet and the civilian mining stations. Her railguns fired in steady sequences, hurling metal projectiles at speeds that made them devastating weapons. A void ship attempted to fire its reality-warping weapon at the carrier. The purple beam lanced out, designed to erase matter from existence. But the Indomitable's hull was layered metal plating, thick and redundant. The beam burned through the outer layers but couldn't penetrate deep enough to reach critical systems before the ship maneuvered away. "Their armor is just metal," observed a Stellar Federation officer. "No energy shielding, no quantum reinforcement. How does it withstand such weapons?" "Because it is just metal," another analyst answered slowly, understanding dawning. "The void weapons are designed to collapse quantum shields and disrupt energy fields. Against simple matter, they are less efficient. Like using a computer virus against a mechanical lock." The realization spread through the chamber. The humans had not failed to develop advanced technology. They had deliberately chosen not to use it in this situation. They had analyzed the Void Collective's capabilities and designed their carrier specifically to counter those strengths. Back in the Kepler 442 system, Captain Okonkwo monitored her tactical displays with satisfaction. 8 void ships destroyed, 3 more severely damaged. The enemy was withdrawing from the mining stations exactly as planned. Status on civilian evacuation, she asked. Kryn transports are loading. Evacuees now, reported Lieutenant Park. Commander Thexall says they need another 2 hours to complete evacuation. Then, we give them 2 hours. Okonkwo opened the fleet-wide channel. All fighters maintain pressure. Don't let them regroup, Commander Rodriguez acknowledged from her fighter. Copy that, Captain. Viper Wing, you heard the lady. Keep them dancing. The human pilots had adapted to their enemy quickly. They learned that the void ships struggled to track multiple small targets moving unpredictably. So they moved unpredictably. No 2 pilots flew the same way. No patterns to calculate or predict. One pilot, Lieutenant Marcus Webb, found himself pursued by a void ship's defensive weapons. Purple energy beams cut through space around him. His fighter's warning system screamed alerts. Any other military would rely on computer-guided evasion. Webb relied on his instincts. He pushed his fighter into a spin, then cut thrust entirely. Momentum carried him forward while he tumbled wildly. The void ship's targeting systems lost their lock, confused by the sudden change. Before they could recalculate, Webb reignited his engines and fired a full spread of missiles at point-blank range. The explosions damaged the void ship's phase generators. It flickered, unable to maintain its dimensional shift. Other human fighters saw the opportunity and attacked without orders, without coordination. Each pilot acted independently, yet their combined assault was devastatingly effective. Commander Thexall watched from his damaged vessel with growing respect. He had commanded fleets for 20 years. He had studied warfare at the finest military academies in the hegemony. He had won battles against every known enemy, but he had never seen anything like this. Their tactics are chaos, said his tactical officer. No formation discipline. No coordinated attack sequences. Each pilot operates independently. Yet they win, Thexall observed. They win because they are chaos. The Void Collective cannot predict chaos. He opened a communication channel to the Indomitable. Captain Okonkwo, this is Commander Thexall. I must apologize. We underestimated your capabilities. Okonkwo's face appeared on his screen. No apology necessary, Commander. We're all learning today. Learning? Thexall's eyes widened. You mean you have not fought the Void Collective before? First time, Okonkwo confirmed. But we studied every battle report. We analyzed their tactics. We built the Indomitable specifically to counter them. Impossible. We have been fighting them for years and found no effective counter. How did you? You were trying to beat them with technology, Okonkwo explained. We decided to beat them with strategy. Sometimes the best answer to advanced technology is no technology at all. On Station Harmony 7, the analysts were having similar realizations. They reviewed decades of data on human military history. What they found shocked them. Humans had been fighting wars for thousands of years. Not just border skirmishes or territorial disputes, total wars. Global conflicts that engulfed their entire planet. They had developed and refined the art of warfare to levels that other species, with their longer periods of peace, had never needed to explore. Look at this, said one analyst displaying human historical data. In their Second World War, they produced over 300,000 military aircraft. They lost thousands in combat and simply built more. Their entire industrial capacity was devoted to war. That level of militarization is barbaric, someone commented. Perhaps, Ambassador Chen said softly, but it taught us lessons that peaceful species never learned. We know how to fight. We know how to adapt. We know how to win when winning seems impossible. She pointed at the display showing the battle. You developed advanced technology during long periods of peace. You optimized everything for efficiency and elegance. But war is not efficient. War is not elegant. War is chaos and desperation and finding whatever works. The chamber fell silent as they absorbed this truth. In the Kepler 442 system, the tide had turned completely. The Void Collective's remaining ships were in full retreat. They had lost more vessels in this single engagement than in their previous 10 attacks combined. The humans had found their weakness and exploited it mercilessly. Captain, Park reported, Void ships are withdrawing to hyperspace jump distance. Should we pursue? Negative, Okonkwo ordered. Our mission is to protect the civilians, not hunt down a fleeing enemy. Let them go. But we could destroy them, Rodriguez argued over the comm. We have them on the run. And they'll remember that, Okonkwo replied. They'll remember that humans are not easy prey. Sometimes letting an enemy escape with that lesson is more valuable than destroying them. They'll spread the word. Other void ships will think twice before attacking. Rodriguez considered this, then laughed. Psychological warfare. I like it. The void ships vanished into hyperspace, fleeing from an enemy they had thought inferior. Behind them, they left destroyed vessels and a shaken fleet of survivors who would never again underestimate the primitive humans. Commander Thexal contacted the Indomitable again. Captain Okonkwo, civilian evacuation is complete. Thanks to your intervention, we saved over 38,000 lives today. Glad we could help, Commander. Help? Thexal shook his head in amazement. You did far more than help. You achieved what the finest fleets in the galaxy could not. You defeated the Void Collective. He paused, then added with genuine humility, Perhaps we have much to learn from Earth. Okonkwo smiled. Perhaps we all have much to learn from each other, Commander. That's the point of the Galactic Council, isn't it? As the Indomitable began recovery operations for her fighters, the galaxy watched and realized a fundamental truth. Advanced technology was powerful, but it was not everything. Sometimes the oldest solutions were the best solutions. Sometimes simplicity defeated complexity. Sometimes the species everyone laughed at turned out to be exactly what the galaxy needed. The humans had not caught up to galactic technology. They had never needed to. They had walked a different path all along, and that path had led them to victory. The celebration lasted exactly 12 minutes. Captain Okonkwo was reviewing damage reports when Lieutenant Park's voice cut through the bridge chatter. His tone made everyone stop what they were doing. Captain, new contact. Hyperspace signature detected. It's massive. The main display switched to show sensor readings. Every officer on the bridge felt their blood run cold. Size estimate? Okonkwo asked, her voice steady despite the fear creeping up her spine. 40 kilometers long, 20 kilometers wide. Park's hands trembled as he worked his console. Mass readings are off the scale. Captain, it's bigger than some moons. On the display, something emerged from hyperspace. It was a Void Collective vessel, but unlike any they had seen before. Where the smaller ships were sleek and dark, this was a monument to power and terror. Its hull pulsed with purple and black energy. Reality itself seemed to bend around it. A dreadnought. A planet killer. All fighters return to the carrier immediately, Okonkwo ordered. Emergency recall now. Commander Rodriguez responded instantly. Acknowledged. All wings. Break off and return to the Indomitable. Commander Thexal's face appeared on the communication screen. His earlier respect had transformed into pure fear. Captain, that vessel is a Void dreadnought. We have records of only 3 sightings. Each time it destroyed entire fleets before vanishing. Our most powerful weapons cannot scratch its hull. How long until it's in firing range? Okonkwo asked Park. 7 minutes at current speed, 7 minutes. Not enough time to evacuate. Not enough time to run. Barely enough time to prepare. The dreadnought moved through space like a predator that knew its prey could not escape. Smaller void ships that had retreated earlier now emerged from behind it, emboldened by their massive reinforcement. On Station Harmony 7, the Galactic Council watched in horror. The humans are doomed, someone whispered. Nothing can stand against a Void dreadnought. Ambassador Chen stood frozen, watching the display. Her earlier confidence had evaporated. She knew the Indomitable was tough, but this was beyond anything they had planned for, beyond anything they could handle, or was it? In the Kepler 442 system, Okonkwo made her decision. Helm, position us between the dreadnought and the civilian transports. All power to forward armor. Charge all railgun batteries. Captain, her executive officer protested, we cannot fight that thing. We should retreat while we can. And abandon the civilians? Okonkwo shook her head. Not an option. We bought them time to evacuate, but the transports are still loading. If we run, that dreadnought will destroy every civilian ship in the system. But we'll be destroyed if we stay. Okonkwo looked at her crew. Good people. Brave people. They deserved better than to die in a hopeless battle. But sometimes hopeless battles were the only honorable choice. All hands, this is the captain. Her voice echoed through every corridor of the ship. In 6 minutes we will engage an enemy far more powerful than ourselves. Our chances of survival are minimal. But behind us are 40,000 civilians who need just a few more minutes to escape. We're going to give them those minutes. She paused, letting her words sink in. Earth sent us here to prove that humanity deserves a place in the galactic community. Today we prove it not by winning, but by standing when others would run, by protecting the weak when the strong have failed. This is what humanity does. This is who we are. On the bridge, officers straightened in their chairs. Fear remained, but it was joined by determination. If they were going to die, they would die like humans. Fighting. The fighter wings returned to the carrier, pilots landing with precision despite their haste. Some fighters were damaged, leaking fuel and atmosphere, but every pilot made it back. As the last fighter touched down, the hangar crews immediately began rearming them. Fighters secure, Rodriguez reported. Rearming in progress. We'll be ready to launch again in 3 minutes. Belay that, Okonkwo ordered.
Keep the fighters in the hangar.
If we fall, you launch and escort the civilian transports to safety. Captain, we should be out there with you. You will be. But if this ship is destroyed, those civilians need protection. That's your mission, Commander. Understood? A long pause. Then reluctantly. Understood, Captain. The Void Dreadnought was now close enough to see clearly. Its hull was covered in weapons. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. Each one capable of tearing apart a normal vessel. At its center, a massive cannon charged with purple energy growing brighter by the second. Railguns ready, reported the weapons officer. All batteries charged and targeted. Okonkwo studied the dreadnought. So large, so powerful, but there had to be a weakness. Everything had a weakness. Think. What did they know about void technology? It used phase shifting to avoid damage. It predicted attacks using quantum calculations. It fired energy weapons that erased matter. What were its weaknesses? Physical attacks worked when they couldn't phase away. Unpredictable movements confused their targeting. Simple technology resisted their sophisticated attacks. But how did you make a carrier move unpredictably? How did you physically attack something 40 kilometers long? Science Officer Kim, Okonkwo called. Those energy readings from the dreadnought's main weapon. Analysis? Dr. Kim worked frantically at her station. It's a reality fracture cannon. When it fires, it will literally tear a hole in space-time. Everything in its path will simply cease to exist. No defense can stop it. What's powering it? Unknown. The energy readings are unlike anything in our database. But Captain, there's something else. Kim brought up a detailed scan. The cannon requires immense power. I'm detecting massive energy flows from all across the ship converging at the weapon's core. It's like all the ship's power is being redirected to this one weapon. Okonkwo's eyes widened. All its power? What about shields? Engines, other weapons? Minimal power allocation. They're devoting everything to this one shot. They want to make sure they destroy us. A plan formed in Okonkwo's mind, insane, desperate, but possibly their only chance. How long until they can fire? 90 seconds. And how long would it take for them to redirect power back to shields after firing? Kim calculated quickly. In a ship that size, at least 30 seconds. Maybe more, 30 seconds. A window of vulnerability. If they could survive the first shot. New plan, Okonkwo announced. Helm, prepare for emergency acceleration. Full burn on my command. Weapons. Target all railguns on these coordinates. She designated a point on the dreadnought's hull, near where the energy flows converged. Captain, what are you planning? Her executive officer asked. They're putting everything into one shot because they think we can't survive it. They're probably right, but we're going to try anyway. She opened the fleet-wide channel. All fighters prepare for immediate launch. The moment we fire, you launch. All of you. Target the dreadnought's main cannon. We're going to give them more targets than they can track. Rodriguez responded immediately. All pilots ready, Captain. We're with you. The Void Dreadnought's main cannon reached full charge. It glowed with purple fire, energy crackling across its surface. In its bridge, if it had a bridge, the Void commanders surely felt confident. No ship could withstand this weapon. 60 seconds to firing, Park announced. Okonkwo gripped her chair. Helm on my mark, full acceleration toward the dreadnought. Give me everything the engines have. Toward it, Captain. The helmsman looked shocked. Toward it. They're expecting us to run. We're going to charge. 30 seconds. The energy in the dreadnought's cannon reached critical levels. Space itself warped around it. 15 seconds. Okonkwo took a deep breath. All hands brace for impact. Helm execute. Full burn. The Indomitable's chemical rockets fired at maximum thrust. The carrier lurched forward, accelerating directly at the dreadnought. The movement was unexpected, illogical, Suicidal, perfect. The Void dreadnought fired. A beam of pure destruction lanced out, wide enough to swallow the indomitable whole. But the carrier was no longer where it had been. By charging forward, Okonkwo had changed the angle. The beam clipped the carrier's starboard side instead of hitting it head-on. The outer hull exploded. Sections of the ship vaporized. Atmosphere vented into space. Alarm screamed throughout the vessel. But the Indomitable survived. Damaged, burning, but alive. "Fire all railguns!" Okonkwo shouted. "Launch all fighters!" The carrier's railguns spoke with thunder. Hundreds of metal projectiles shot toward the dreadnought at relativistic speeds. At the same moment, every fighter launched, swarming toward the massive vessel. The dreadnought was vulnerable. Its shields were down, its power depleted from the massive shot. And in that moment of weakness, humanity struck. Railgun rounds punched through the unshielded hull. Explosions rippled across the dreadnought's surface. Fighter missiles found gaps in its armor, penetrating deep into its structure. The human pilots flew like demons. They dove into the massive ship's superstructure, threading between weapon emplacements, targeting the energy conduits Dr. Kim had identified. No computer could have flown such courses, but human pilots with their instincts and courage managed the impossible. Commander Thexal watched in absolute amazement. They did not run. They charged. They survived. And now they are winning. On Station Harmony 7, the Council watched in stunned silence as humanity's primitive carrier and outdated fighters tore into the most powerful weapon the Void Collective possessed. Ambassador Chen allowed herself to smile. The galaxy was learning a valuable lesson. Never underestimate humanity. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Kepler 442. The Great Hall of Station Harmony 7 looked different now. The circular chamber that once echoed with laughter at humanity's expense now buzzed with respectful conversation. At the center table, where before only the most advanced species sat, human officers now occupied seats of honor. Captain Sarah Okonkwo stood at the main podium, wearing her dress uniform. The medals on her chest included the Galactic Star of Valor, the highest military honor the Council could bestow. She had received it from Commander Velrith himself, who had apologized publicly for his earlier mockery. Today, the Council had gathered for a different purpose. They wanted to learn. Captain Okonkwo, began the Vraxian military analyst, his crystalline form glowing with genuine curiosity rather than condescension. "We have studied the battle recordings extensively. Your tactical decisions defy conventional military doctrine. Can you explain your thought process?" Okonkwo smiled slightly. "Which decision specifically?" "All of them, but particularly the choice to charge the dreadnought's weapon instead of evading." The hall fell silent. Every delegate leaned forward, eager to understand. "The Void Collective relied on predictability," Okonkwo explained. "Their quantum computers calculated the most likely responses to any situation. Running away was the logical choice, the survivable choice, so I chose the illogical option." "But you could have been destroyed," someone protested. "We could have been destroyed running away too," Okonkwo countered. "That weapon would have tracked us. By charging, we changed the angle of attack. Instead of a direct hit, we took a glancing blow. Still devastating, but survivable." She brought up a holographic display showing the battle. The key was understanding that advanced technology often has a weakness. The more sophisticated the system, the more power it requires. The dreadnought put everything into one massive attack. That created a vulnerability. Commander Thexal, now fully recovered from his injuries, stood from his seat. Captain Okonkwo is being modest. What she accomplished was more than tactical brilliance. It was courage. When my fleet ran, when we abandoned hope, humanity stood firm. He turned to address the full council. "For 20 years, I commanded the hegemony's finest ships. I won battles across a dozen systems. But I never faced an enemy like the Void Collective. They destroyed everything I knew about warfare. Then this human captain in a ship we mocked as primitive defeated them in a single engagement." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the hall. "We have received reports from across the galaxy," announced the Stellar Federation ambassador. "Void Collective attacks have ceased completely. It appears that word of their defeat has spread. They no longer consider our space easy prey." "One battle changed everything," observed another delegate. "How is this possible?" Ambassador Chen stood to answer. "Because the Void Collective learned what you all learned. that humanity fights differently. We do not rely solely on technology. We use creativity, instinct, and courage. Those qualities cannot be calculated or predicted. She walked to the center of the hall. For months you measured us against your standards. You saw our chemical rockets and called them primitive. You saw our kinetic weapons and called them outdated. But you failed to ask the important question, which was, someone asked, whether our technology was appropriate for the task. Chen gestured at the holographic display of the Indomitable. We did not build this carrier to impress you. We built it to fight the enemies you could not defeat. Every design choice had a purpose. Dr. Kim, promoted to Chief Science Advisor for the human delegation, added her analysis. Void technology exploits quantum systems and energy-based defenses. So we used analog systems and physical armor. Their weapons predict optimal flight paths, so we flew suboptimally. They phase through energy shields, so we used solid metal. We studied our enemy and built exactly what we needed. And the fighter tactics? Asked a military officer from the Photon Collective. The apparent chaos? Commander Rodriguez, now celebrated as the hero of Kepler 442, grinned. That wasn't apparent chaos. That was actual chaos. Each pilot made independent decisions based on what they saw and felt. No coordination. No battle network. Just skill and instinct. But this is inefficient, someone argued. Computer-assisted flying is faster, more accurate, and completely predictable, Rodriguez interrupted. The void ships could calculate where a computer would move a ship. They couldn't calculate where a human would move it, because we don't always do the logical thing. Sometimes we do the crazy thing, the desperate thing, the thing that wins. The council absorbed this information. Around the hall, military officers from a dozen species took notes, recorded data, and asked questions. The arrogance of 3 months ago had transformed into genuine desire to learn. We are implementing changes based on human doctrine, Velrith announced. All hegemony vessels will now include manual control systems as backup. We are training pilots in instinctive flying rather than purely computational methods, and we are developing kinetic weapons to supplement our energy armaments. Similar reports came from other species. The Vraxians were studying human military history. The Stellar Federation had requested human advisors for their naval academy. The Photon Collective wanted to understand human psychology and decision-making under pressure. Humanity had not just won a battle. They had changed the galaxy's entire approach to warfare. There is one thing I still do not understand, Thexel said. When the dreadnought appeared, you could have retreated. Your mission was complete. The civilians were almost evacuated. No one would have blamed you for withdrawing. Why did you stay? Okonkwo met his gaze steadily. Because leaving was the practical choice, Commander. But humans do not always choose practicality over principle. Those civilians needed more time. We gave it to them. That is what we do. Even if it means certain death, especially then. What good is survival if we abandon our values to achieve it? The hall fell into contemplative silence. These were species that had optimized everything, including their ethics. Decisions were made through careful calculation of costs and benefits. The idea of choosing certain death for an abstract principle was foreign to them, yet they could not deny it had worked. Humanity's willingness to sacrifice had inspired them. The Indomitable's stand had given them courage to keep fighting, and that courage had led to victory. Humanity has taught the galaxy an important lesson, Chen said. Technology is a tool, not a solution. The most advanced weapon is useless without the will to use it effectively. You spent centuries developing incredible innovations, but you forgot the fundamentals of warfare. Strategy, tactics, courage, sacrifice. She paused, then continued. We did not forget because we could not afford to. Earth's history is written in conflict. We fought each other for thousands of years before we reached the stars. That brutal experience taught us lessons that peaceful species never needed to learn. Until now, someone said quietly. Until now, Chen agreed. The Void Collective forced you to relearn what you had forgotten, and we were here to help. The Vraxian analyst approached Chen. Ambassador, would Earth consider establishing a military training program? Many species wish to learn human combat doctrine. Chen smiled. We would be honored, but understand, what we teach is not just about tactics and weapons. It is about mindset, about understanding that war is not a science to be calculated. It is an art to be mastered. And sometimes it requires doing things that make no sense to computers, but perfect sense to warriors. Over the following weeks, human military advisors spread throughout the galaxy. They taught alien pilots to trust their instincts. They showed engineers that sometimes simple solutions worked best. They demonstrated that courage and creativity could overcome technological disadvantages. The Indomitable underwent repairs and upgrades, but Okonkwo insisted that its core design remain unchanged. This ship won because of what it is, not despite it, she told the engineers. We improve it, but we do not change its nature. The new carrier included some alien technology, advanced sensors that did not interfere with manual control, shields that supplemented rather than replaced physical armor, communication systems that allowed coordination without eliminating individual decision-making. It was a hybrid, the best of both approaches. Human and alien working together, Commander Thexal visited the Indomitable before she departed on her next patrol. He found Okonkwo on the observation deck looking at the stars. "Captain," he said, "I wanted to apologize once more, not just for the mockery, but for my dismissal of your approach. I have been a soldier for decades, yet you taught me more about warfare in one battle than I learned in 20 years of service." Okonkwo turned to him. "Commander, we all have something to teach each other. You showed me the possibilities of advanced technology. I showed you the value of simple solutions. Together we are stronger than either approach alone." Thexal's forearms performed a gesture of deep respect. The galaxy thought humanity was behind us, trying to catch up. But we were wrong. You were not behind. You were on a different path entirely, and your path led somewhere we needed to go. As the Indomitable prepared to depart, Rodriguez assembled her pilots in the hangar bay. They stood before their fighters, the same aircraft that had been laughed at months ago. Now those fighters were studied and respected throughout the galaxy. "Listen up," Rodriguez said. "The galaxy knows about us now. They know what we can do. Some will try to copy our tactics. Some will develop counters. Our advantage of surprise is gone," she grinned. "But we still have one advantage they can never take away. We are human. We are unpredictable, creative, and too stubborn to know when we are beaten. So let's keep showing them what that means." The pilots cheered. On Station Harmony 7, Ambassador Chen watched the Indomitable jump to hyperspace. The ship that had been mocked was now honored. The species that had been dismissed was now respected. And the technology that had been called primitive was now recognized as exactly what the situation required. She thought about the journey humanity had taken. From a single planet to the stars, from isolation to membership in a galactic community, from ridicule to respect. They had not achieved it by becoming like the other species. They had achieved it by remaining uniquely human. And that made all the difference. As Chen returned to her quarters, she passed a group of young aliens studying at the Human Military Academy, recently established on the station. They practiced manual flying in simulators, learning to trust instinct over computation. They studied Earth's military history, understanding the lessons written in humanity's long and violent past. The galaxy was changing, learning, growing, and humanity, the species that had been laughed at for its primitive carrier, had become the teacher. Chen smiled. "Let them laugh," she thought. "We will show them why those laughs were premature." Because humans had learned long ago that the best response to mockery was not anger, it was excellence. And excellence, whether primitive or advanced, always earned respect in the end.